Hi, within this lecture we're going to cover how to create methods inside of a class. But before we go on with methods, I will show you a way to create default attribute values for class instances. So we already defined our attributes in here, but suppose that we have an attribute that are preset and we don't have to take this from user. Maybe user can change it whenever he or she wants, but we have to give it a default value. Can we do it? Of course we can, and we don't have to do it under init method because this will be already predefined when the instance of a class is created. Okay, so I can think of an example for that. So our class is a musician class, and let's suppose that we have an attribute called job. Okay, so the job, the occupation of a musician will be always a musician, right? So I can just assign this to be musician under here before I go to init function. So let me shift enter all in here, and if I call my musician dot job right now, as you can see it's already in here. If I call this, it will be musician by default, even if the user didn't specify it. And if the user wants to change this, can he do it? Yeah, of course. If I call this right now, it will be singer. Okay? So this is how you can create default valued attributes in your classes. Okay, you don't have to get it from user, you don't have to put it under init function, you have to put it under the class and give it a default value. So now let's move on to the methods. Okay, so we now know how to create attributes, how to create instances from a class, but we always talked about these methods, functions that are built inside classes. So how do we create functions? How do we create methods inside class? So it's pretty easy. It doesn't have a difference from creating a regular function outside of a class, okay? But they are called methods this time. So I will use def again, and then I will choose the function name or method name as sing, for instance, and in here I have to write self again. Because why? Because this self refers to the instance, and you have to use self inside of every function, every method in a class, because you may want to give a reference to the instance, right? And we will do an example about this as well. So whatever I write under this method, like print, let's sing some song like we are the champions, for instance. Okay, so let's say we are the champions. Whenever an instance calls this method, it will print out we are the champions. So let's try this. So I'm hitting shift enter to rerun all these cells, and now if I say my musician dot sing, and as you can see sing is in here, and of course I have to put parentheses at the end, because if I didn't, it will say that this is a method, it's inside of this musician object and everything. But if I call this parentheses, it will execute the method and it will say we are the champions. So we didn't use self, right? So how do we use it? How do we refer the instance from a method? So let's suppose that I have to write out the instrument of and the instance inside of my singing methods, right? So let's use this formatting that we have learned before, and let's open a curly braces in here, okay, at the end. And inside of this curly braces, I have to write down the instruments. So let's hit shift enter. And if I hit shift enter to my musician.sing, it gives me an error. says that instrument is not defined. But I have already defined the instrument in here, right? And I have already specified this James, this musician, has a guitar. But I didn't specify that it belongs to the instance, current instance. And in order to do that, I have to say self.instrument in here. So now it refers to the current instance, and if I hit Shift Enter, now if I hit Shift Enter in here, it will say we are the champions guitar. And it will work if you create another instance with another name, age, and instrument. It will just write down the instrument of that instance. I think we are okay, so within the next lecture we will see some practical usages.